Okay, welcome to the first listening session for the proposed 2026 budget for the Presbytery of the James. I'm Josh Andrzejewski, moderator of the Presbytery and member of the Budget Committee. This is not a Presbytery meeting, but we do still want to maintain some decency and order. So I'll ask if you want to speak, if you would raise your hand on Zoom. I'll try to keep track of who's who and who's in line. And we'll have a brief, Peggy is going to pray for us. I'll give a brief overview, and then we'll take comments and questions, and hope that we can have some good discussion here. I'm just watching to see who else is coming in. I think this would be a good time for prayer. Peggy, would you unmute and lead us in prayer?
Sure. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for the gift of this day. We thank you for the work that this committee has been doing. And we're grateful for the opportunity to share that work with the Presbytery. Lord, now as we go forward, I pray your spirit will be amongst us. As questions come up, they can be answered. I pray that we will have discernment in all that needs to be done, that it be done according to your will and according to the boundaries that we have already put in place. So God, we ask your presence again to be with us. Bless those who might be on their way coming in. And hear us as we share this report. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Peggy.
Mm.
Before we go forward, I would like to just have the members of the Budget Committee who are able to be here just say hi and maybe introduce yourself a little bit. So Barb, would you unmute and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Barb Young. I am from Hebron Presbyterian Church, and I am clerk of session at Hebron right now.
Thanks. And Gary, would you unmute and introduce yourself?
Good evening. I'm Gary Selmese. I'm an elder at First Presbyterian Church in Charlottesville. Pleased to be with you and to serve on this subcommittee.
Great. And Carrie, would you unmute and introduce yourself?
Terry Foster, I'm the temp GP and temp state clerk, and the silent one in the budget committee meetings.
We also had the help and wisdom of Joel Morgan, the moderator of Mission Council, who I'm not sure can be here at all tonight. He may be able to come in later. And also John Howe, a ruling elder at the Presbyterian Church of Fredericksburg. He is not able to be with us this evening, but I'm very grateful to these folks and to their gifts. I'd like to be pretty informal. I am going to share the presentation here in just a second so that we can just go through some things. And I think it's this. Yes. Okay. Oh, no, there. All right. So we've got the presentation up on the screen. I will just highlight a couple of top line things. Hopefully you've had a chance to read through this, look through it. I appreciate some comments that have already come in. This section here is sort of the narrative overview. I want to get to this executive summary. We were guided by the resource management policy that was adopted at the June Presbytery meeting, which gives us guidelines about how much can be drawn from investments and for what purpose those funds can be drawn. We identified the revenue and support that we expect to receive, or we project we might receive from congregations. We also identified the operating and mission expenses and broke them out to give a sense of where things are going. That leaves us with a net loss of about almost $240,000. That is also supplemented by the draw from investments. The resource management policy requires us to draw at least 4% and up to 5% from the investment income. Only up to 1% can be used towards operations, and that's what you see here, this $47,000 figure. The rest must be used for mission. And because of that stipulation, we sort of present the budget to you in two parts. The first is the operating expenses, and the second is the mission expenses. For example, we can't cut funding to collegiate ministries in order to, add a temporary stated clerk or a part-time stated clerk. That is something that the resource management policy does not allow for. So we needed to kind of have almost two budgets side by side and make sure that we were abiding by that 1% limit on the investment draw for operating expenses. I will put on the screen some of these charts that we have here. So this is our, this is the budget breakdown. We wanted to kind of show the major areas where money is going. So our mission giving is about 24.5%. The per capita responsibilities we have to the larger church, almost 23%. Our personnel and staffing costs are around 40%, and then costs for property and office make up about 13% of this proposed budget. When we look at mission giving, we wanted to break that down as well. We have a ongoing commitment to Habitat for Humanity that's around 10% of our mission giving. The constitutional committees, that would be CPM, COM, CON, COR, they are about 6.5%. New worshiping communities is around 32%. Leadership Connections team includes collegiate ministries, but we thought it was more transparent to show that collegiate ministries is about 20.8% of the budget. Leadership Connections is just around 1%. And then mission and service team is 10.5%, and Camp Hanover is a little more than 18%. There's a page that kind of describes what each of those categories include. This, we wanted to show the draw on investments over the past few years, from 21 to the projection for 26. As we note here, the draw amount for 2025 is an estimate because we haven't gotten through this year yet. The other draw amounts are reported out from year-end statements. And so you can see there was an increase in 23 and 24, but then that has come down in the projected numbers for 25. And the number for 26 is what is approved by the investment subcommittee. The investment balance at the end of the year, again, 2025, this is based on June 30th data. The rest of these are from year-end statements. So showing what the balance in those, the Church Ministry and Development Fund and the Genesis and Generation Fund, both of those together is what gives you these amounts. And then finally, we just wanted to draw attention to the undesignated giving. This is what guided some of our projections about how much we anticipate to receive from churches. And we've got a good 10 years of data here based on the giving histories from each year. And we projected that there's about a 4.7% decline year over year. That's the average. You can see that in some years that was not as steep, but in some years it was more steep. So we kind of applied that to our projections for 2026 and 2027. Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And I'm interested if there are, and you know what? I'm realizing that I also would like Jen Rowe to introduce herself, because I think this this conversation is open to questions about the staffing model. I would like for us to talk about the budget first, but those questions are also fair game. So Jen, would you unmute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
I'm Jen Rowe. I'm ruling elder at the Presbyterian Church in Fredericksburg. I am on the Personnel Committee and serve as Vice Moderator on the Mission Council. And I see that Tom Coy is also here, who is on Personnel. And so if you have had the chance to read our position description, we're here to help answer questions if you have comments on that, questions, suggestions as well. Thanks, Josh.
Sure. So as I said, I recommend we start with questions about the budget and or comments if you have comments to make, and we'd love to hear from you. Yes, Cobus, I see your hand. If you can unmute, we'd be glad to hear from you.
Sure. Thank you, Josh. Sort of a really soft question in some ways. Just wondering, what are the things in the budget that you that have been working with it more closely like and would like to see more of, and this may be sort of just self-explanatory, but what gives you pause, if I can say it that way?
So your question was, where are there areas where we would like to see more funding, and what areas give us pause or we might consider? I'm not quite sure.
I think that feels about right. Yeah, around those things.
I can take a crack at this, and I have been living with this for the past few months. So Gary and Barb, feel free to jump in. I think as we started meeting, and you'll read this in the narrative, we realized that the Presbytery has kind of given two contradictory directions to us. The first was in September of 2024. The Presbytery adopted a recommendation from the Strategic Plan Review Task Force. There were maybe some other words in there that suggested two full-time positions, a full-time presbyter and a full-time stated clerk. And then in June of 2025, the Presbytery adopted the resource management policy, which put some very clear guidelines on how much from the investments could be used towards the budget each year and for what purpose. And it was quickly clear to us that based on the resource management policy, there was not a way, without making extreme cuts to other staff or areas, to fund two full-time positions, one of full-time presbyter and one of full-time stated clerk. And so that we had to sort of reconcile those two contradictory messages from the Presbytery. And that is what led to the recommendation, developed in conversation with personnel. Although, in full transparency, the financial realities really shaped that of one full-time position that is both stated clerk and presbyter. I was grateful, and I'll just speak candidly, I was grateful that the resource management policy sort of safeguards our mission spending so that, as I said, we can't decide, well, we're not giving anything to Campaign Over so that we can fund another staff position, or we're gonna go back on our commitment to Habitat for Humanity because we want that money to go into operations. I think that's a very wise thing that was included in that policy, and it sort of safeguards our mission for the future. Some of you may have heard, and I know if Joel were here, he would speak to this, that the Mission Council is drawing together a group of people who can look at our mission spending and maybe come up with a mission focus, because another thing I think the budget committee ran into is that we had no clear direction on what to value or what to prioritize in our mission spending. That really was, for the most part, looked at as we're kind of trying to continue year over year. We're trying to fund the requests that we received from those groups, which by and large, we were able to fund things as requested. The line item budget does indicate the places where the requested amount differs from what the budget committee has proposed. So I've said a whole lot. I don't know if Barb or Gary or Carrie want to jump in there.
I'll offer, Corbus, I think you asked what gives pause. And that was on page 8 that Josh shared. The undesignated giving is continuing to go down. And, you know, some strategy for giving needs to lift that up so that the mission can continue. The closing of churches may help endowment, but it's not a good way to stay purposeful. So that is my greatest concern, is the reduction in the giving. And then, as Josh stated, I think it's wonderful that there's going to be a group looking at mission and priorities of mission, which will make the work of future budget subcommittees easier to wrestle with the resources that are available. Where should they be applied? Yes, thank you.
Could I share something?
Sure, please do.
Along with that congregational support idea, I know from my context out in the Northern Neck that, you know, we feel so disconnected from Presbytery that you kind of think, why give? You know, there's that kind of ongoing question, why give? And I'm just really pleased with the proposal that we have for the stated clerk general presbyter position, that there is such an emphasis on congregational development and the expectation that the job will be a Sunday through Thursday job. That person will be in the churches on Sundays and actively connecting with congregations and sessions. And I think that's going to really, it can't do any harm. And I think it's going to do a whole lot of good to help reestablish an organic connection with our congregations.
John Flournoy.
Yeah, I think that's true, Tom, but I don't think you're going to see an increase in income. Congregations are struggling now. Mine is. I think we're realistic to expect that it's going to decline.
Well, we can debate the point, and history will prove who's right or wrong. But I think a better connection will certainly slow the decrease.
That's true. That's true. But
and I mean, if we don't do something, it'll slide even faster. But yeah,
I think a couple of years ago, the expectation was that we could increase it and balance the budget.
Yeah,
and I think that was a false expectation.
That's unrealistic. That's unrealistic. Right. Yeah. And I do like the way that the investment policy has worked out that can supplement both operations and mission. I think that's a nice balance. And looking in where the major cuts seem to be in the proposed budget is, it looks like Presbytery staff is going to take something, well, no, it's going to more or less remain the same level as it is now. But the real cut would be for Camp Hanover And also first call ministry support. That one I'm not familiar with. That's a program under COM. Can somebody share what that one's about? Because that seems to take quite a hit there.
That is a program of COM. The budget committee looked at the spending on that line item for the past several years, and it was quite low, well below what was requested. And so we lowered what we were proposing be budgeted for that. Carrie, can you speak to that more?
Yeah. One of the other things that kind of talks to our bigger picture, the reason the spending for that particular thing, we're not getting first term call passes. The folks we're getting coming in have established track record. That was intended to help bridge the gap for someone fresh out of seminary to provide other mentorships or things like that. And that's why it wasn't really used over the last few years, because we sadly we didn't have that. You know, that's one of the realities facing the whole denomination, that not only are our congregations aging, the average age of our pastors are rising, and there's not that big influx in newbies coming out of seminary ready to tackle parish ministry. So it was a cut that happened outside of us, out of our control.
There's a question in the chat, and this is about the projected increase in per capita giving. Let me see if I can share this, because it's probably helpful to look at what we're talking about here. If we look at the income here and we go across this line, so the 2025 budget was adopted with 13,000 projected to be given to the presbytery for per capita expenses. Those are our obligations to synod and general assembly. You can see in 2024, we actually received much more than 13,000. We received almost 20,000. And looking at, I think we looked at 2023 as well, we felt comfortable saying that 18,000 is probably a realistic amount to project that we would receive. You can see a similar thing in the 2024 actual was almost $100,000 more than what we adopted for 2025. And so we felt that based on this number that we could project about $500,000 of income. So that's why there's an increase in the, in the proposed budget, an increased expectation for per capita giving. Churches are able to designate some of, or all of the money that they give to the presbytery, that it go to fulfill our per capita obligations. It's a small portion of what we receive. The undesignated is much larger, and then some churches do also designate that the money only be used within the POJ. But again, those designations are much smaller than the big overall. I hope that helps with your question, Sam. I know you're in a noisy spot, so thanks for putting that in the chat. Other comments okay, great. Other comments or?
Yeah, can you put that back up?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to keep my eye on the folks here, but yes, this is.
I was suggesting that 325 that shows on the drawn on investments.
Do I need to scroll down?
No, go back up. Go back up. Third line down.
This here.
That number.
Okay.
That be changed to 50,000 for this presentation.
Okay.
And that the 275 difference go down under mission, where you have 190.
So that would be down in
there.
This area here. Yes.
Just for presentation.
I'm sorry?
Just for the presentation.
Sure.
I don't think it's any. I just think it makes things balance out a lot better.
you're kind of comparing apples to apples when you look across the lines, right?
Yeah, I'm an accountant. That's why I think it works.
Sure. That's not something I can do in the moment right now, but we can look into
Right.
whether we can kind of revise that and upload it. But that's a good point that you make, John, that that the draws on investments. The reason that isn't shown is because prior to this year, there wasn't a formula for how much could be applied to which part. And I'm not
Correct.
sure, I need to kind of give it some thought. I'm not sure that all of the, I'm not sure all of that money went to mission in 2024 or 25 or whichever.
25. Yeah, well, I
So,
think the problem will be when you start looking at 26, if that number is not there,
right.
it looks like we're doing something crazy with mission
I see what you
when we
mean.
aren't.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Or balances them both.
Yeah. I think it's a good point. It will help us to kind of look at apples to apples.
Yes.
So I'll take a look at that and see what we can do.
Okay.
Colleen has a question here in the chat. Can you clarify, are we drawing from investments or drawing on the interest earned on investments? That answer is very well spelled out in the resource management policy. I will do my best to word this here. It is an amount draw that is recommended to us by the investment subcommittee, and it is based on a 12-quarter rolling average of the investment balance. So I think the answer is we are drawing from investments. It's not simply the interest earned, but the draw is meant to be well, I think I'll stop there. We're drawing from investments based on a 12-quarter rolling average. You're welcome, Colleen. Thanks for that question. Other questions about the budget? I'm happy to kind of transition us more towards other things, but Tom, I saw you unmute. Oh, I'm sorry. And John, I saw your hand too. So Tom, and then we'll go to John.
Well, I just wanted to cycle back to the Camp Hanover decrease. It's a fairly significant decrease, and I know we've been supporting Camp Hanover for many years, and of course now it's a 501c3 on its own, and does pretty effective at fundraising, it seems, for supporting operations. I imagine this will be something of a discussion point when it comes to our vote in Presbytery. Are there thoughts behind that? Is there a sense from Camp Hanover that they could handle a cut such as this? Is there any thoughts, any context you can provide?
I can provide some information.
Yeah. Anything
so,
to help here. Yeah.
So context might be helpful. So
Yeah.
Camp Hanover is one group. The other is the Habitat for Humanity commitment that did not pass through either mission and service team or leadership connections team. So in reality, the collegiate ministries probably would have requested more money, but their request went to leadership connections team, and then leadership connections looked at things and made a recommendation. So there are cuts in places that may not show as a difference from requested to proposed, just because there was another level of kind of review and reflection. So that's just one piece about Camp Hanover made a direct request that did not pass through any other committee. I thought I was going to say something else about that, but I can't speak to I can't speak on behalf of Camp Hanover. So I won't. But if other members of the budget committee want to talk about any of the thinking there or the realities that we faced, I'm happy to hear from y'all. I see that, Linda, and I will get to you in just a sec. And then and we've got John on deck too. So, Gary, were you speaking? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I don't recall the detail, but when we're thinking about Camp Hanover and Habitat, maybe more Habitat, those were multi-year commitments that ultimately will go away, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yeah.
So not entirely a surprise to those entities.
Yeah, the Habitat for Humanity is a multi-year commitment that was made a few years ago, and I think we've still got a few more years to go on that. I did see, let's see, I saw John's hand, John Flournoy's hand, and then Linda's got a question in the chat, and then I saw Carson. So I'm keeping a list here.
My question was still on Camp Hanover. I thought we had an agreement when they split off that our funding would decrease as theirs increased. And we changed that last year in the budget and didn't decrease it. Now, I understand we're negotiating a contract with them or an agreement. Do you have any information on that?
Carrie, I see you're making motions here. Would you like to speak to that?
Noting some of this happened before my time coming back here, when the decision to split the two entities came about, there's a 5-year agreement that was put in place that defined contributions that the Presbytery would supply to Hanover in the time of transition. And in the process of splitting off, a great deal of the land, property, and finances were transferred over to Camp Hanover, funds that really had been theirs to begin with. And there was that 5-year contract that expired actually 2 years ago. And with that, the one of the last amendments to it or whatever, they said that the contract could be renegotiated or it could terminate. And all, but as far as the paperwork in that agreement, once that 5-year window was completed, which it has been, in theory, then the contract or the agreements, all that revert back to zero, that there is no connection and no commitments between the Presbytery and Camp Hanover, unless in the negotiations of how we plan to support each other produces something like that. So it's been over a year or so of trying to get the board of directors and the trustees of the Presbytery together to work out anything. But as of yet, nothing new has come from that. But going strictly by the agreement to spin them off, our obligation is over, unless the Presbytery decides to come up with a new covenant with them, which has not yet happened. So that's where we are at this moment.
Linda's question, and thank you for that, was about how was the amount for Camp Hanover decided or chosen. Last year, you may recall that this was proposed at, I think, 30 or 35,000. And then by action of the Presbytery at that budget meeting, it was increased to stay consistent with the amount from 2024. And so we went back with, we kind of started around that 35,000 range, and then looked at what requests we had gotten from other groups and entities and tried to fund them as much as they had requested and as much as made sense with use in prior years. And then that's what helped us settle with that figure that's in the budget right now. Okay, so I think we're up to Carson.
Thanks,
Are you
Josh.
still there? There you are. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to commend the Budget Committee. I think what you propose is very helpful and on target and in line with the new policy we adopted in June. In round figures, it looks like congregational contributions are going towards operations only. Now, they may designate some stuff, but just in terms of the total numbers, it looks like that going in that direction. And I'm just wondering if the suggested budget this year, which I think is very helpful transparently to make sure the 4% goes to mission, if we're setting ourselves up to institute a per capita. I just mentioned that as observation, not as a proposal, just as observation. So thank y'all for the good work you did.
You said the magic per capita word. All right, I'm looking for any hands, any questions, anybody, any comments? And again, if we'd like to transition to talking about the proposed job description, that is fair game for this conversation as well. So I invite you to speak. Sam says, go for the next topic. I would say then, Jen, would you like to make any remarks or speak to the job description that's being proposed? And we'll keep in mind that this is being recorded and folks may be watching this because they couldn't join us this evening. So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. We worked with our personnel committee, worked with Mission Council and with the budget committee, wanting to be realistic about our financial, where we are financially, as well as understanding what that report from the strategic plan task force had been for a two-person, a stated clerk and a separate general presbyter, but realizing that perhaps we need to make it one position. And how might it look different? Members of our committee spoke with a handful of other presbyters around the country who are doing this, where they are both stated clerk and executive or general presbyter, to hear, their excitement about it, their struggles, where they, what they found, really motivating about the job. And we also looked back at the strategic plan and the hope for really, as Tom already has mentioned, focusing on connecting the congregations in the POJ. We talked about moving that week to a Sunday, Thursday, where the presbyter, part of that position is getting out and meeting congregations where they are. And obviously realizing the width, the breadth, length of the POJ does not make it easy for someone to get around. It certainly wouldn't get around annually, but to try and be out and about, as Carrie has been doing already. And I think with a lot of people really enjoying that, meeting Carrie, hearing from the presbytery, and he's been able to make some connections that way. So those are a couple of the big things that we talked about as we put together this position description. Tom, please feel free to jump in what I'm missing.
Well, that's a very good summary. I was in on those interviews where we did talk to other stated clerk, executive presbyter, unified positions across the country. And they were very successful, except they were all in presbyteries like 30 to 60 churches in size. And when we started to do the math, it became clear that, yes, we can do a stated clerk general presbyter position. I mean, Carson did it for, many years. Before him, Bill Morris. So I mean, it's been done. It's not new under the sun. But given the demands of especially stated clerk work these days with administrative commissions and judicial matters, which apparently are very time consuming and just pile up there. I mean, on top of the stated things that stated clerks need to do, these things can really be very time consuming. It may be that a presbytery our size is going to require a little more, or at least occasional support staff to help out with some of the things that come along, some of the workloads. Maybe we can also be cultivating a volunteer corps of folks who would be willing to step in and help out with some of the heavier loads that can be done by persons who have a little bit of skill in these matters. So that's kind of a built-in sensitivity in this position. We understand this presbytery cannot do all things, and we're trying to restrict it so there can be as much freedom to work with the congregations and the stated responsibilities of staffing and be the treasurer of the presbytery and all of those things. But there may be some need for occasional support staff to help get some of these things done.
I was appreciative of the personnel committee. Just having been involved in the presbytery the past few years and understanding dynamics in churches, we're moving from a staff-driven model to a more volunteer and committee-driven model. And I think that's going to need to be really clear, both to whomever the candidate is that is selected for this position, as well as to the committees themselves. I think we need to free this person up to be able to do the things that we've talked about, be in churches, be out in the presbytery, handle the administrative things that they must, but I'm not sure they can be expected to be present for full meetings of Commission on Ministry and CPM and those sorts of things. I think developing relationships with the chairs of those committees, being available for consultations, maybe quarterly participating in committee meetings so that they're seeing people, and but I think it's going to need to be very clear that those committees need to, as much as possible, run themselves, and I'm a big cheerleader for that approach to things. So Carson, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Josh, thanks. I have to admit, and please don't everybody laugh out loud at me. I read the job description and said to somebody, "That's just impossible." And they said, "You did it for 20 years. So what are you complaining about?" And then what dawned on me is that I didn't do it alone. We had 2 or 3 support staff the whole time through that. And so while it is a doable job, that support, as Tom is saying, I think is important. And I'm just wondering, Josh, if we shouldn't start recruiting some assistants, volunteers, whatever now, so that any candidates we talk to say, well, we've got this person in place, that person in place. I just don't want to scare all potential candidates away when they read the job description and realize that there's almost 100 churches to look after. So that would be my encouragement, if we could start doing some of that volunteer, or even pay someone $100 a month or something, just to make sure they're going to do those things. The other question I guess I should have asked during the budget: what dollar amount in the 310,000 is projected for a general presbyter stated clerk?
Let me, so that is hard to answer, Carson. And the reason we didn't include a breakdown of each line item for personnel is somewhat for privacy. That is available to the Mission Council, but also recognizing that we may need to, some of it, as you know, is cash, salary, housing, there's the benefits. So not necessarily wanting to advertise what our top line amount is hard. We're trying to kind of maintain privacy there. Let me look at some things, and I'll see if I can get you some kind of answer.
I'm just wondering about a general, because you've reduced the
Yes.
staffing 100,000, it looks like roughly, and so if you only got 310,000 with if it's 4 positions, general presbyter, stated clerk, administrative assistant, communication, and finance. So I mean, it's going to cost us, I'm assuming 125 to 150,000 for a full-time person. So I
think that is the I think that is kind of the ballpark. Let me see if I can do some numbers here. Yeah, it's right around there.
Okay, good. I don't need a specific
120, 130, and as a percentage, thanks. So yeah, it's in that ballpark.
Okay. Thank you.
And then once we develop, well, I guess there's a step for developing the MDP for the position, and there'll be, that group will need to determine what the minimum and maximums are. Thanks. And also I wanted to say thanks for that recommendation. I'll make sure that that gets back to Mission Council as we look at the needs right now. I mean, Carrie might appreciate that in things. Oh, and look who's in the waiting room. Our friend Joel Morgan is here. Wonderful. Welcome, Joel. We're glad you're here. I know you were at another commitment, so glad you're able to be with us. Other questions, comments, suggestions? The packet for the called meeting, I believe, will be coming out tomorrow. And in there, you'll see a sort of a plea from us. Of course, amendments, motions are always appropriate from the floor. If you have an idea of an amendment or a motion that you're planning to make, it is helpful for the stated clerk to have that in advance. That allows us to make slides that we can put up on the screen so people can read the motions. It's meant to be a way to get your ideas more clearly communicated to the body. So there is the request for motions that that you're going to make to be brought in advance. The other point that we've looked at is any motion to change an amount in the budget needs to be accompanied by how that's going to be funded. So if we're increasing a line item in one place, we need to know where the decrease in another place is going to be. And it needs to abide by the resource management policy. So as I mentioned earlier, we can't say, well, we're cutting all mission giving and we're going to get 2 extra presbyters, or, we're going to, I don't know, I could come up with another example, but, that mission spending has to remain mission spending. If you want to move mission spending around within that budget, that is a possibility, but you have to show where the money is coming from. So hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. I have a general question for those who are not involved in drafting the documents. It would be helpful, since you read through it, to give us some reflections on, was it put together nicely? Did it flow? Did you make sense of it? Are there some places that perhaps you got tripped up over terminology or format a little bit? Because we're also hopeful that come the actual meeting, as best as possible, the documents are accessible to readers who have an accounting background, who don't, and who likes graphs over words or things like that. Just some general formatting observations, I think would be helpful for us to know going forward. if anything?
I was also going to say back to your earlier thing, Josh, about budgets. If you're also if you want to bring a if you want to bring a motion to increase something, and your congregation, and you're bringing a $50,000 increase from your congregation, that is also incredibly welcome for the budget meeting. So just, to make that part of the thing as well. Wouldn't that be a lovely, wonderful thing? Yes, we want this thing in the general budget. So our congregation has said we're gonna fund that. I've never seen that happen. That would be amazing. So anyway, just
Joel, would you accept just a pledge, or do they need to bring a check with them to the?
oh man,
to the
I mean, a pledge would be great, but a check would be even better. But it would have to go into next year, right? So I mean, I guess it could be
Right,
a prepaid anyway.
Yes.
We don't have our
We'll hang
finance
on to
people
it.
will figure that out.
Oh, good times.
Yeah.
Other questions? We're coming up on, when did we start this? 6:30. We're coming up on an hour. I see a comment from Sam. Both documents were easy to follow. I looked at my notes from the Special Finance Committee work, and your spoken Camp Hanover explanation was right on the mark. Thank you. Other comments, questions, queries? I really appreciate the investment of time this evening. We will have another listening session next week. I believe it's Monday.
Josh, this is Barb.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
would
Barb.
just like to say a comment to the Personnel Committee. I think you all did an amazing job with this. I know that creating this position description was not simple by any manner of means. And I know it's very, very heavy. I agree with Carson on that, but I still think you've done a wonderful job on it.
I echo that.
Yeah, and as I'll speak, as Mission Council moderator, I'll echo that 100%. We have leaned into the Personnel Committee this year really hard, because we just had so many personnel things to work on, and I'm just so appreciative of their work, and of the budget subcommittee's work. It's just been really heartening to see these things come together, and I hope, again, I don't know what the earlier content of the questions or observations were, but I hope that the entire presbytery will, even if they don't agree with some of it or want to tweak some of it, as we are always want to do, that they can see that the good faith effort and hard work that these folks have put in on this. Thank you.
Josh, real quick, what's the projected
Yes.
what's the projected timeline to elect a search committee and to do a search?
So my
Gosh, my
sorry.
crystal ball over here. Joel, go ahead.
Right. I guess Josh and I've been talking about this a little bit. I mean, I'd like to, I personally, as Mission Council moderator, would love to help expedite, probably the nominating committee beginning to put that search committee together as quickly as we can, and so that we can get searching, because we'll have to do some other things and prepare some documents, of course, to get searching, and to also do that other good work that we always do when we're searching, is to tell people, hey, if you know of somebody somewhere you think is good for this, let's get them on alert, get them looking at this job description. So that's not a tight timeline, Carson. I'd love to see it, as soon as we can. Also knowing that it's November 13th when we have this meeting, and it's going to be really hard, perhaps, to recruit people over the holiday. But I'm hoping early January we could have that group put together. So it's a good question. But we don't want to dilly-dally. There's no reason to dilly-dally. We've done this hard work. Let's take the next steps.
Linda had a question in the chat about, if we're approving the job description next month, do we later approve an MDP, which I think stands for Mission Discernment Profile, or how do we get from job description to having the MDP live in the CLC, the Church Leadership Connections website? Carrie, you unmuted yourself. Do you know? Do you want to speak to that?
Basically, what would happen if everything continues like we propose, so once we have the job description up and running, then there'll be the process of electing. If we do it just like you do regular searches, we'll elect a search committee, and they're the ones who actually work with the job description, and they will craft the MDP so that they're better versed. So, I mean, that's going to include all the things when you look at a discernment file, what's our mission statement? How many of us are there? All the demographics we need to take care of to fill one of those out. And then it will come back. Normally it would go back before COM in the case of a pastor. I don't know if we would run this back through personnel or through mission council or whatever, but the search committee would be the ones that will formulate the MDP. They will have it approved, and then it will go into the system, and then we'll see what happens. So that's a quick overview, mimicking the way our normal pastoral search would take place. I think that's going to be the most prudent way to do it. That still accomplishes most of the things that we're used to, but it also puts in it's be a little bit faster that way, if you will. We've minimized the steps, but we've empowered those who are doing the hard work of searching, evaluating, discussing, and bringing folks in to get up and running sooner than later.
And I imagine having a job description to work off of will also make that work more efficient.
And if I can add, one of the things that's happening within the office is that currently, if you look at the way we have the office staff named, essentially Barbara is handling some of the record keeping side of the state clerk while I'm doing the polity side, if you will. And we're both trying to do our best to track our times that takes. So at least by the first of the year, we'll have 2, maybe 3 months worth of some quantitative numbers. Barbara can say, during my 40-hour work week, I actually spent X number of hours doing this. And I can say, state clerk things that I had to do took this much of my time. And so we can kind of be fair to the person coming in, knowing that at least for the clerk side, we have a better grasp on time commitments and what's realistic to expect from that. So as the candidate is weighing how that is going to be. So, and the presbytery, that I came from, where I served as clerk, we had a very strong administrator that would handle a lot of the bookkeeping side of the state of clerking. And so, and in some ways, over the past few years here, you've had a staff person doing that as well. So as Carson alluded to back in the past, he and predecessors and the person right after him had staff support. And so we're realizing that staff support in some capacity is going to be needed as well, whether it is using paid staff or developing volunteers. So that would be,
or offloading some of that work that's being done back to committees.
Yes.
To do
Yes.
that. So it's probably a blended approach.
Yes. And actually the committees are getting better. They are. They're learning.
So. Josh?
Yes, Tom.
Yeah, before we sign off, I know we're getting very close here. In fact, I have a spouse who's telling me supper's ready, so my remarks will be short. I appreciated Joel's support for the personnel committee and the work we're doing. I want to turn right around and say that what we're doing much more clearly and deliberately now than we ever have before. I've been on personnel for 3 or 4 years now. And this past year has been the best ever. And it's because the Mission Council itself has reorganized and is very intentional about its work, doing a thoroughgoing job and communicating well. We've had a real rebirth in the Mission Council. I just want to commend Joel and all the others who are part of that effort. It is making a difference, and it's much appreciated.
You're here. I echo that. It is 7:32, so I am going to close us with a word of prayer. And yes, let's pray. God, thank you so much for this time that we've had. Thank you for this mission that you've given to us and the responsibility you've entrusted to us to be good stewards of your gifts in this region. God, I pray that you'd be with each one of us. There's work that we have done today. There's work that we've left undone. Help us to trust you to guide us to the next important thing that we have in front of us, to rest this evening and to rejoice in the gift all the gifts that you have given to us. In your Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Blessings to you all. Be well.